talking about the dreaded tax season. And I know I have a lot of questions. So we will be right back after these messages. We'll be talking with Tom and Sue. Hi, we're here talking taxes with Tom Newcomb and Sue Medicus. We're going to get a lot of answers to our questions about taxes. So it's tax season. We're here talking with Sue Medicus. Do you have any tips for, say, an actor that wants to have some write-offs?
Sure. I mean, the best thing to do is to look at all the expenses you paid that may or may not relate to your acting career and document everything, because for every dollar you document in expenses, you save a dollar or 50 cents in taxes. It's well worth it.
Great.
I'd look also to try and look at what your income looks like and make sure that you've got that all documented. If you get 1099s, make sure you account for all the 1099s, because the IRS matches those up very carefully with your Social Security number, and you don't want to be sitting there thinking you filed one way and a few years later the IRS says, hello, you missed these 1099s. You better start paying us some more money. Is
there a minimum before you have to file the 1099s?
Usually you'll get 1099s if you make more than $600 from any provider. But you know, that may or may not lead to having to file a tax return. The best thing to do is take it into an expert and have them help you and have them look at your situation and craft a situation to your best defense.
What do you think is a big problem with some people when they try to do their taxes themselves and whatever?
I think a lot of it is a lack of knowledge and fear. You know, they don't want to report all their income because they believe that that means they're going to lower their taxes. Well, that's fine short term, but long term the IRS will check on that income and find out about it. So you might as well report everything up front, but have your documentation for your expenses. A lot of people don't realize all the write-offs they're allowed under the tax law. I mean, the ordinary and necessary business expenses are pretty huge, and if you've got it documented and you keep track of it during the year, you're in good shape, and you want to do that because the IRS can't fault that if you've got all your documents.
Now, the laws change every year. Is there a lot of big changes this year?
This year, the fiscal cliff that the IRS encountered with Congress at the end of the year led to some delays with the IRS in filing because they had to reprogram a lot of their systems. Not a tremendous quantity of changes this year. I think we're going to see more changes in the future, but not a lot for 2012. 2013 and 2014 will go into a lot of changes. And then Obamacare hits, which has tax impacts, and that will go into a lot of changes. But short term, there aren't too many. There's just been the delays. This filing season is actually very compressed. Last year was about 105 days. This year is only about, all told, about 80 days. So that's 25 less days for everybody to get their taxes filed in. And we're seeing a real crunch from our clients because of that. People are delaying more because they're thinking, oh, well, I can't file yet anyway, so I might as well delay. Even some of my larger clients are delaying. One of the things that we want to watch out for is these compressed filing season. I'm worried that people are waiting and waiting, and all of a sudden they're going to forget to get their documentation together. They're going to miss something because they waited till the last minute. So I'm really watching that carefully. I'm concerned about the delays that I'm seeing.
Now let me ask you this, what's compressed tax season mean?
It means that because of the delays, IRS didn't allow filing until January 30th. In previous years, they'd allow filing on January 10th.
Okay.
And even in January 30th, there were still some forms that weren't accepted till mid-February or the end of February. So that meant all the same number of tax returns had to be filed in much less time. The IRS is about 15% down on the number of people that have filed their tax returns thus far. So that's a lot to make up for in the next 3 weeks.
And by law, they don't have to have all their W-2s out and everything
right
until January 31st anyway.
Exactly, so. Exactly, yeah. So it's just been a very, very compressed time frame. You have people who want to file early because they might get larger refunds. The minute they get that W-2 in their hand, say it's January 10th, they want to go file. Well, they couldn't file this year because they had to wait till January 30th. Mm-hmm. That led to extreme frustration in parts of our taxpayers.
All right, we're going to move on over to Tom and see if he's got any helpful advice.
Well, all I can tell you is file your returns on time. Whether you have the money, if you owe money, you pay what you can, and because the more you pay, the less you're going to owe them in the end. It's when I took the tax course, my instructor made a comment about it being the biggest lottery in the world. And it is. You can claim anything you want, but you get caught, you get burned pretty badly. I do not recommend that situation. Yeah, especially now because with the computers and everything else, they can find it very quickly. In fact, used to be if you made a mistake on the return, you hear about it 3 years later. Of course, they charge all of the interest to the taxpayer for that time difference. Now, this isn't even going through a full year, and they've already found it. So, make sure you do. Make sure make sure that you pay your taxes. Make sure that you report everything, and be honest completely, and you don't have to look over your back.
Okay, good advice. We're gonna go to break, and we'll be back.
I'm nuts about downtown Baltimore's West Side. Hello, I'm John Waters, and I'm proud to say that Baltimore has always been my home. It's the inspiration behind all my films, including Hairspray, Crybaby, Serial Mom, and A Dirty Shame. Let me tell you, there are not a more eccentric, monumental, eclectic, intriguing, and character-filled 28 blocks anywhere in the world, and I'm here to prove it to you. This is where Babe Ruth was born. They tell me he's the best baseball player ever. Not that I'd know. I'm more into theater. Like nearby Arena Players, the nation's longest continuously running African-American community theater. I'm also a big fan of century-old Antique Row, where New York dealers come to buy and later mark up their purchases sky high for their Manhattan buyers. On that same block sits the U.B. Blake National Jazz Institute, housing memorabilia from Baltimore jazz greats like Billie Holiday and, of course, UB himself. The West Side is also where the Maryland Historical Society calls home, with its many Baltimore artifacts, including the original manuscript of the Star-Spangled Banner and Nipper, the RCA dog. Oh, and the National Dentistry Museum, the only one of its kind in the U.S., is where George Washington's dentures live. And no, they were never wooden. The Baltimore Development Corporation, and the 40-plus members of West Side Renaissance, led by Peter Angelos, that are ensuring the success of what the New York Times calls the largest revitalization plan of its kind in the country. And it's all happening in this one neighborhood called downtown Baltimore's West Side. Infectious, fashionable, full of vim and Baltimore vigor, I walk the West Side streets these days in amazement at what it's become. I'm nuts about downtown Baltimore's West Side. You will be, too.
Welcome back from the break. We're back talking with Tom and Sue about taxes. So we were just talking about the digital age and how modern it is and how quick they catch you. You file your taxes and every little bit of paperwork. You have anything to add?
Yeah, it's amazing what the computerized programming is doing nowadays. The IRS can marry up anybody with their W-2s, with their 1099s, if they sold stocks, the stock trades. Now stock agents are actually reporting the actual gains and losses. They used to just report the sale price. Now they're reporting the sale price and the basis. So the IRS can look into that. If somebody, quite often we'll have somebody come into one of our offices and they won't want to file a W-2 because they'll say, well, that means I owe. Used to be they could get away with that for 3 or 4 years. Now they come back in the next year and say, by the way, you missed this W-2 and now you owe us these dollars. You no longer get the earned income credit and you owe us this money. So before you even file the next year, they're getting you for the prior year. So it doesn't take long for them to catch up nowadays. It's really amazing what's going on. It also has led to a lot of issues too with regard to filing. If someone fraudulently files a return in your name, the IRS computer programs are catching up with it, but they're catching up with it slowly. They've got to do something about this fraud situation that's going on. It's really traumatizing people.
Identity theft.
Exactly. And how they can stop that. It's really tough because people go out and they just file a tax return on their own. And it goes into the system and nobody tracks it. They don't know where it came from. And that's become a big problem.
And it takes a long time to straighten out.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You know, the IRS works with people who are victims of that, but it does take a long time. We see a lot of that.
Okay. Also, what else comes? The IRS, they can pretty much intercept your return for anything from child support to back taxes.
Right. That's actually, there's an organization in the government called the FMS, which is where anything related to child support, past due student loans, state tax liens, etc. It's all reported into that one central area. So the IRS comes in with a refund for you, they can grab that. Now what unfortunately happens is sometimes the state refund comes in, the records haven't been updated, they grab that one too. So you have to go back and marry that up and say, okay, wait a minute, you should have only grabbed one, you didn't allowed to have two. I always tell my clients too that the one court of law where you're presumed guilty is the IRS. Because you have to prove your innocence by proving your deductions.
And they don't make it easy.
No. They're kind of friendlier than they used to be. And they're definitely trying to work with taxpayers. But I think taxpayers are extremely intimidated, and understandably so, which is why it's good to involve an expert to help.
Do you have any advice for, say, if somebody wanted to get the TurboTax programs that they offer at the store?
Oh, well, TurboTax is, I've seen TurboTax create issues where people come into our offices the next year or even the current year and they haven't understood the flow of TurboTax such that they've over-reported their expenses or under-reported their expenses or over-reported their income, because TurboTax asks questions in various ways that you can repeat yourself. And I've seen numerous instances of problems. It's similar to, do-it-yourself, garage openings and do-it-yourself kitchen repair. I think you go to an expert when you have complicated issues, and even taxes, people think they're very simple, they can be. But if you don't know the law, you could miss deductions, and that's the one thing you don't want to do.
Yeah, you get in trouble that way.
Yep. You also pay more taxes that way.
Well, one thing I can think of is when a person likes to compare, but they compare apples to oranges. For example, they want you to do their return, but they don't want to pay any more than what they would pay for TurboTax.
Right.
And it doesn't work that way. You don't get we're doing all the work that you would have had to do if you did it yourself. Plus, we're giving you guarantees that the work is done correctly. As long as you've given us all the information, we'll have it done correctly. So that's about. And it doesn't matter whether it's TurboTax or one of the other ones out there. They just if a person knows taxes, they're fine with TurboTax. But if they only tell you because they want to save some money, and they got what they call a simple return, and some are simple, some aren't, it's very easy for them to miss something.
Have you seen a lot of horror stories, or in your time with the TurboTax programs, people coming in and having problems?
I've seen some problems, but obviously they're return related, so I can't go into them at all.
Right.
So basically, you recommend not going with the TurboTax.
All right. I do, for those who do not owe taxes, yes.
Okay.
I think, you know, we talk TurboTax because TurboTax is one of the big gorillas. I mean, there's a lot of self-help tax programs out there, but again, it's not providing expert advice. Between Tom and I, we have very many years of experience as far as how we can handle tax law and how tax law changes. I'll give you an example. Maryland tax law has recently changed. A few years ago, Maryland put some teeth behind their license renewals, such that if someone has not filed their taxes or is past due in taxes, it can hold up driver's license, car registrations, professional licenses, and we're finding a lot of people are having problems with that. So that's all the more reason people come into us and they ask for help with regard to a state situation, because the state is actually holding up, in some cases, their livelihood. You know, if you're a truck driver and you can't get your commercial license renewed, I mean, that can be very problematic. And that can be due to TurboTax or some other program, or a fraudulent preparer, or a good, you know, somebody who thought they were doing the right thing but miscounted their deductions, didn't report their income. All we need to do is make sure that you get straight with the state and work things out.
And Maryland's not the friendliest tax state in the whole.
Well, that's the understatement of the century, but yes, that's quite true. Maryland is, the state needs revenue, so it's looking for every source it can, including past due taxes.
And you're all for, you work out of Liberty Taxes, right?
Yes, we have Liberty Tax. We're on the west side of Baltimore. Liberty's the fastest growing national franchise in the United States, and we're all a bunch of tax gurus that, you know, we really love our customers, and we have very, very excellent customer loyalty, and we're out to help them all the time. We're open year round also.
I recently started a business, not recently, a few years back, but home improvement business. Is there any advice or recommendations you can give for somebody like me?
Okay, if you're starting up a business, there's a couple things you want to keep track of. Always your mileage, because if you have a home improvement business, like you have a truck that you're traveling, you document your mileage. Every time you leave your home, if your office is in your home, that mileage becomes deductible if you drive to a job site. If your office is in your home and you store materials with regard to your home improvement business in your home, you want to document how you're using that, because that's another deduction. It's a deduction a lot of people who have a small improvement business forget about, all the stuff that's all over their basement or their garage. They've got ladders, they've got paint cans, they've got wallpaper, they've got wood, and they're using a substantial part of their home. If they can document that and they're using it solely for business, that helps shelter income, and that's the idea. When you're self-employed, not so much anything bad, but sheltering your income with ordinary and necessary business expenses and allowable deductions is perfectly okay, and it benefits the taxpayer greatly.
Yeah. Another thing, the kind of question I had is sole proprietor better or LLC? Which type of business is better for that?
Well, if you're an LLC, you actually, if you're a solely owned LLC, you actually file as a sole proprietor, because it's what's called a disregarded entity. Now, an LLC can protect you legally, but that's a legal matter. You can also organize as a corporation. You could become an S corporation where you're taxed on the profits of your business, but that is rather complicated, because then you have to pay yourself a salary, and you have to do 941 forms and W-2s, et cetera, et cetera.
File every quarter.
Right, file quarterly, right. So but that can lead to some tax savings. It's just a matter of how big you want to take your company.
As far as paperwork, documentation, I've been told that being a sole proprietor is easier than LLC, because you don't have to keep as much documentation.
Well, LLC is probably the simplest form of, you do have to keep some documentation. The thing I would recommend to anyone is if they have their own business, sole proprietor or LLC, you want to have a separate checking account for your business from your personal account, and even a separate like Visa debit card or a credit card, so that your business is completely separate from your personal finances. You know, they're kept in different pants pockets, even though they're in the same set of pants. You keep the finances separate. Makes it a lot easier at tax time to reconcile.
Okay. Tom, you have any other advice for small business?
Yeah, make sure you have your taxes paid. Remember, if you are working as a sole proprietor, you are going to be responsible for the Social Security and Medicare payments for employer and employee. They do give you a little bit of a credit, but that's another story. But it goes increases your taxes. Of course, it's on your income, not your not your gross. It's your net income where it hits you. So if you earn more than $400, it's a little more 400, but basically speaking, it's always been 400. You're stuck with paying some Social Security and Medicare tax, and of course it's going to help you in the end when you retire. But well, right now, and you're looking for money to work on and less taxes to pay, that's not going to help you that way. And it doesn't matter how many credits you've got. The self-employment tax you've got to pay, period.
Okay.
You notice the tax return comes out with after your taxes, they come out with the credits first. And the credits can reduce your income to zero. But then they come up with other taxes. And that's
We got to go to break, so I hate to cut you off, but we'll be right back.
USS Constellation. There's a grand lady in Baltimore who has taken her rightful place as the Inner Harbor's crown jewel in the heart of the Chesapeake Bay.
Into the 1860s, and you are back in time on the Constellation learning what it was like to be here.
People come on board and they get touched by this walking through history that they're able to do, and they're able to see the hammocks and see the officer's wardroom and sit in the captain's cabin and have this whole immersive experience that you're never going to get at most types of museums. So this is a really wonderful experience for them, and they have no idea what they're missing out on, and then they come on board and they keep coming back.
We fire the cannon, turn the capstan, and ring the bell daily. And we recommend the free self-guided audio tour, which comes in 2 flavors, one perfect for children, the other for adults. Plus, there's the ever-popular Powder Monkey Tour for kids and hands-on adult tours like A Ship as a Machine and Black Sailors in Navy Blue. Groups can also come aboard and sling their hammocks in our overnight program or host special events. Our crew knows the USS Constellation is an amazing experience, but don't just take our word for it. Here's what recent visitors had to say.
It's very kid-friendly, very family-oriented, and the kids will love it, and they'll come out asking questions, which I love.
It transports you back. You can almost get the feel that you were actually there, because laying in that hammock.
So welcome aboard USS Constellation and enjoy your visit to the historic sites of the Chesapeake Bay Gateways Network.
Welcome back now. We're talking with Sue and Tom about taxes. Sue, do you have any advice for actors as far as filing and...
Sure. I mean, acting is an interesting situation where you might go many months and be hungry and the starving actor. We often heard about that. Yet you're incurring costs to go look for parts, to research parts. You know, you have to buy clothes that are only suitable for certain parts, aren't suitable for other things. So you need to keep track of all those expenses. The IRS actually has something called a net operating loss. Like, say you have a huge loss in one year because you've earned no income. You can carry that business loss back or forward to offset income in a future year or a prior year. So it's always good to keep track of those expenses and file a return even if you don't have any income, because that documents your losses. You may have to carry them back so many years. You can elect to carry them forward. It depends on your situation, but it can reduce taxes in other years. So it's well worth looking at.
What if you have an actor that has 3 jobs, 3 totally different jobs?
Okay.
How do you clump all that together?
Well, it depends on whether the actor is an employee in one of the jobs, if he's a 1099 contractor in another job. So if he has like 3 different contracts for acting positions, those would all go on the same Schedule C because they're related to acting. If he acts as an actor and then he works part-time as a waiter, which I know a lot of actors do, as a waiter he would probably get paid on a W-2. So that would go on a separate part of the return. But you still want to put all those expenses on your Schedule C, it's called, because that helps offset your income again. So you just have to look at what the source of the income is and how to report it.
All right. Okay, we're ready to wrap it up. We're talking about taxes with Tom and Sue. Is there any last thoughts you guys would like to add?
Do you want to go first?
Well, just remember, the quicker you pay your taxes, the better off you are, because it costs you the less.
Yeah, that's very true. I think the other thing to remember is to keep track of your expenses all year. It's a tough discipline, but if you just have a separate credit card, debit card, or checking account, and you just keep track of everything, it makes it so much easier. And say you're in self-employed on a Schedule C. That's roughly a 15% tax, and say you're in the 15% tax bracket with the federal government, and say you're in the 9% tax bracket with the state. That's 39% taxes, okay? If you save $2 in receipts, you get back 78 cents on your taxes. So you're getting a 39% return for every dollar you document in deductions. That's what I would say is the most important thing, is to keep track of, that you save yourself money by documenting your expenses.
You gotta have a lot of discipline.
That's true, but at the end of the day, you pay less, and are able to sleep at night because you legitimately pay less.
Right. As far as LLCs, do you have any final thoughts on that?
Well, I think with an LLC, usually it's formed to protect the individual from liability. It's called a limited liability corporation. And what you can do is, as a sole owner LLC, the IRS does that as a disregarded entity, and you file a Schedule C. If you have other parties in it, you can file a partnership return or a corporate return, or even elect to be taxed as an S corporation if you're more than one party in the LLC. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it tax-wise. The idea, though, is to make sure you keep track of the finances within the LLC and not marry it up with your personal finances, because that's what will drive you crazy. And if you have investors, that'll drive your investors absolutely crazy.
Hey, we've been talking taxes here with Tom and Sue. I want to thank you both for coming on and sharing all your insightful information.
Our pleasure.
Sure did help me out a lot. And we'll be back next week with another great show.
Every year during our television fundraiser, Children's Miracle Network hospitals celebrate hope and healing. Thanks to your generous donations, sick children can get better. So please join me, Marie Osmond, with my co-founder John Schneider, and other celebrity hosts as we share moving stories of children in your community who need your help. Tune in and celebrate hope and healing, and give to your Children's Miracle Network Hospital.
We've enjoyed another great show today. We've been talking with Tom and Sue about our taxes and tax season. We've gotten a lot of questions out there answered. Hopefully we've helped the public, and we will see you next week on Top of the Morning. Till then, I'm your host, Chad Hartline. If you'd like to use me in one of your productions, my number is 410-491-8080. I hope you have a good one. See ya.